like this question doesn't kind of go both ways. It could if you want to argue that. But anyway, so I was thinking, you know,
That's a bad place to
we've
start.
all experienced these, 100+ degree summer days, right? Where it's just like scorching hot, and you're like, man, I wish it was just, cold for a little bit, or I just need to get some, temperature change, so on and so forth, because there's no temperature variance anywhere we live. It's either scorching hot or absolutely freezing cold. There's no nice in between.
Is okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I was thinking was, on like a random, 100-degree day, no matter where you are, what if for like a minute or two on that day, the temperature goes from 100 to like 10 degrees in a second. There's no gradual decline in temperature. There's, not going from 100 to 90, 80 in a span of a minute. It's 100. And then a minute later, it is 10 degrees for like 2 minutes. And then it goes right back up. What theoretically could happen to like infrastructure, to the literal Earth climate? What are the possibilities? Like, say, Nate, there was a tornado actively going on, and all of a sudden it's 10 degrees. Like,
So-
what would happen?
I have a follow-up question to that. In your hypothetical, before
Mhm.
Nate answers, are you saying this is like around the world? So like if it's 100 degrees in Nebraska, but if it's like 60 in
It
Montana or something,
could be,
does
or
these giant variances happen everywhere in the world?
or if we're going off, yes, it could be like that. Or if you just want to go specifically like in your situation where you can have control of, oh, there's a switch that'll make it cold for like 2 minutes, and then you flip it back on, and then it's scorching hot again. Like, what would happen? Like, would things like, you can't expect like a lake to be frozen and then unfreeze in that amount of time. You wouldn't think. But like, what if it did? That's the point of the hypothetical. Like, what if all of a sudden you're just out on the boat, all of a sudden it freezes and there's ice everywhere? But then you're like, what happened?
I mean, so this is assuming this is happening regardless, not asking if it could happen.
Yes.
Okay. So that's out of the way
Hold
first.
on.
That's
hold
out of the
on.
way first.
We're gonna follow up on that second part then.
Yes, we're not assuming that we're actively going towards that.
I mean,
we
that
may or may not be, but
that analogy of the boat, I mean, you could probably get, it would depend obviously on like the size of the body of
Right.
water, on how fast it
Right.
would freeze.
like an ocean,
And
definitely
the
not. But like if
depth.
it was like or just say like a farm pond or something like that, like a small body of water that's not that, maybe 10, 15 feet in depth. That's it. Like, not a whole lot. Or like a pool, even. You could think of like, what if you were swimming in a pool? And all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's a nice 100-degree summer day, and then it's 10 degrees in an instant.
I mean, for that specific example, I would just think of like putting ice cubes in the freezer, so they don't. I mean, it'd have to be really cold for it instantaneously. Could, I guess, but if you're going from 100 to 10, it probably wouldn't. But you get like a nice little glaze after like 5-10 minutes. It'd start to crystallize a bit. It'd be more of an inconvenience, I think, than a big issue. But
I feel like windows everywhere would just explode.
Well, that's what I was thinking too. Like, what would like shatter from that, the heat expansion, to all of a sudden you're like freezing it, and then you're expanding it again in that a quick amount of time.
Yeah.
Because at least like with going from summer to fall to winter, you have that gradual decrease and increase. So the windows are adjusting slowly. You do it that fast, it's no different than pouring boiling hot water on your windshield in the morning in the winter.
Mm-hmm. And the only reason I thought about that was, like, even if an instance for like today, where it's, below zero most of the day, and you're like thinking,
it's like
oh, I'm
60
thinking of
degrees out
those.
here.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well,
It
I
was
was
3
like,
degrees
wow,
this
I wish it
morning.
was so hot, and like I was sweating my balls off at, the College World Series again. And then we get to the College World Series, I'm like, wow, this sucks. I wish it was cold again.
Yes, what we wish for in those times is fall and spring weather.
Yes. But I just had that curious thought. I didn't actually know if there, like I said, like, what if there was an active tornado and all of a sudden it's 10 degrees? Would it just die? Would it become an ice tornado where all of a sudden there's
probably not
sleep pellets being wrapped around and throwing them at you?
That would depend on kind of the finer details of what the atmosphere looks like, and if you're cooling it that quick, if you're losing some of the density and buoyancy of the air around it, which I would assume you would, but
it's just, these are curious thoughts that I had for, like, would you, if you had that option, like at a 100-degree week, to make it like that cold for just a brief amount of time, just to cool you off, and then you go back to the scorching weather, like, would that be worth it to you, risking literally everything else around you that could explode?
I would probably just lean on my air conditioning, but might be a little more economical. But I mean, if I'm in the window industry, I would want to use that switch quite often.
Right.
So
no, if I was in the insurance industry, I'd want to use that switch all the time.
Yes.
Well, it depends. If they use it too many times, then they have to pay out too much, and they don't like that either.
Right, but if you do it,
hint again, LA fires.
See, if you do it just often enough, or like if you do it just once, and you get a bunch of people calling into your insurance agency about your windows, that's pretty big payday. So you don't do it again for another 6 months, but you can get a haul.
I mean, sure, but ideally, well, I mean, probably not anymore, but ideally there'd be some government oversight on regulations on when we can screw with people, but
what do you
it's 2025, we're pretty open to anything.
We shall see.
Supposedly. We are not only weather informative, thank you for that weather education there, Nathan, but we are also very sports informative and very factual in the Sportsball department.
Arguably the most by our number one rating.
Correct. And
provided that you don't fact check us.
Yes.
That is like, if you ever sign those agree consent forms at the end of everything that you signed, that's like the biggest asterisk at the end of our consent form is please do not fact check.
Yeah, like most things you see on the internet nowadays, don't fact check it, take it at face value. It's probably correct.
Yes.
That's because everything on the internet's believable. Come on.
Yeah, that's what I was taught when I was growing up.
Like, why would Reddit lie to us?
Hasn't yet, to me at least.
Yeah, and I don't see a reason why it would ever need to lie to us, because that's where all the factual information is Reddit and Wikipedia.
Yes, not exactly in that order, but yeah,
whatever order is more convenient for you to find first. But this is the Sportsball Podcast, your source for sports. I am Andy, that is Zach, and that is Nate, back from his extended vacation where he hates us and didn't want to talk to us, but it's fine.
Hey, but I want to talk to you now, so that counts for something, right?
It does count for something in our hearts. So
not mine though, just yours.
A lot that has happened since we have last talked. I'm pretty sure we had absolutely no discussion the last time we talked about the bowl game, and the bowl game has come and gone since for Nebraska with absolutely no discussion about it whatsoever.
There was some in the New Year's episode. It was acknowledged.
It was acknowledged. That has happened. The college football playoff and college football itself has wrapped up for the 2024-2025 season. There, we'll talk about that. The NFL playoffs are down to the conference championship games now. And then on top of basketball and hockey are both in full swing going forward. But first, we'll go to our quick tad bit about the MLB segment news there. Not much in terms of what has actually happened in terms of MLB, but what has happened today is the three Hall of Fame votes came out for the 2025 Hall of Fame inductees for this Hall of Fame class for Major League Baseball. One short of a unanimous vote would be none other than our Japanese savior Ichiro Suzuki, unless you're talking about God, who am I thinking about? Not you, Darvish.
Come on.
The other great.
Yeah, you, Darvish.
Come on. I don't think so.
Oh, I'm funny sometimes. Otani. Unless you want to say it's you, Darvish.
Oh,
No.
I mean,
Ichiro
Quash.
Suzuki, first ballot Hall of Famer. The other two, CC Sabathia and then Billy Wagner. I don't really know much about Billy Wagner. Know of the name, but that's really about it. But those are your 3 Hall of Fame inductees for the 2025 class of Major League Baseball. So I don't like CC Sabathia, but that's mostly because he played for the Yankees at the end of his tenure. So
I was telling Andy before we got on here, I was shocked that he wasn't in there already.
Yeah,
that's fair.
And
who the hell didn't vote for? Who's the one person that didn't vote for each?
He hasn't been doxxed yet, but I'm pretty sure he'll be doxxed pretty soon.
You better be. They better be. We'll be.
It's what the analogy I made to Zach was. There was one. It was either a pro poll voter or an all pro voter that didn't. There was what like Surtain was one short of the all pro vote for first team cornerback. And he quickly got doxxed. I don't remember who it was, but it's kind of the same comparison as like, why would you not vote Ichiro unanimously into the Hall of Fame? I mean, he was an absolute stud and a legend, and still one of the weirder swings I've ever seen a baseball player do to this day. But he was damn good at it, and he was fast. And
hey, man, if it works, it works.
It worked, and it worked really well for him for all his time in Seattle. So no surprise that he was inducted. And I mean, it, as much as I hate CC Sabathia, it's also not a surprise for his career numbers and awards and everything that he accumulated over his career. And then I don't know much about Billy Wagner. He's a name I've heard.
Billy Wagner just got inducted to the Hall of Fame. That's what we know about.
Yes, that is what we know.
Big points.
You heard it here first.
And then the other free agency news was that other Japanese pitcher we were waiting to make a deal. And everyone, I want you to hold on to your butts because this may absolutely shock you and surprise you of who he signed with. But it might have been the Dodgers that he might have chosen. And if you're thinking, don't the Dodgers have like 6 or 7 strong rotation arms that could be starting pitchers? You would be right, because they are getting literally everybody that you would possibly think in free agency.
I believe I saw that the Dodgers have spent more this off season or this coming season than like the past 4 World Series winners combined.
Mm-hmm. And the Dodgers were one of them.
Salary cap's going great in the MLB.
Yeah. If their
money is just a construct in that league, I think.
It is.
Like it exists, and they have like a thing, cap, but they're like, it's just there. Like it doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Right.
We'll attach this one to probably some commentary that will happen regarding a certain football that might be played in the collegiate realm.
Might be.
Maybe.
We'll see. We'll see. But that's outside of that. There's no other major league news other than the Dodgers are cheating, and that's just about it.
Are we allowed to say the quiet part out loud here, or
somebody has to?
Well, we just did,
okay.
So
it certainly is not.
Correction, actually, Andy did. So if anybody's gonna get pew-pewed, it's gonna be him, not us.
The only thing I know that the internet can do for Major League Baseball is they bullied fanatics into changing their uniform. So why can't we just bully Manfred into implementing a salary cap?
Could we also then, if we were able to bully fanatics back into doing that, could we also bully them into making better fan gear, because the screen print graphics are garbage? Nothing like buying a $35 shirt with like $8 shipping, so it's like $50 at the end when you're done.
Yeah.
And then, by the time it gets to you, it's just this blank Gildan t-shirt with a screen printed ironed on graphic. Like, I could have done that.
Yeah, you mean something that they paid probably a child labor law, somebody less than $2 to do. No.
Again, well, quiet
Zach,
part out
it's
loud, I guess.
capitalism.
Have you thought of the poor CEOs, Zach? They're real.
Yeah.
You know what? I would
sad.
even like give up. I'd even give up on the screen print graphics if they give us like that tri-blend shirt. And I know that they make some of them, but you have to like play freaking where in the world is Carmen Sandiego to find them on the website. Like, let me like search by that fabric type, and then you might have more of my business. But whatever.
You don't like just playing the lottery with products that you're buying straight up?
I can't say that I do. No. Strange concept, I understand. Although I do buy a lot of stuff off of Amazon too, so I guess technically I'm always playing the lottery.
Yeah.
Like this is a completely off-topic thing compared to sports, but like one of my favorite things in the world is someone's like, I bought a graphics card off of Amazon and they sent me 7. It's like, how does that even happen? Like, how?
Yeah, why does that happen to us?
Yeah, right? Like, man, I wish I could order a freaking 5,000, whatever the new graphics cards are for my computer and get 8 of them.
Right.
And then they're like, we reached out to Amazon. They're like, just keep them. I'm like, what?
Costs more for us to ship it back anyway.
Right.
I mean, that's probably what it is, but it's like, good Lord, what are we doing?
With that, we'll switch over to Stick Puck, which again probably will be rather quick. We're just in the middle in the grind of hockey season at this point. As of right now, for the Avalanche, they're probably in the exact same place that they were last time we talked. It's just somewhere in the middle of that Central Division, just climbing their way, trying to get up top. I think they're only 7 points out of first, so that tells you just in terms of the Jets, the Wild, and the Stars, just kind of how close those 4 teams are right now for the Central Division. So they're playing all right. I mean, they're definitely better than they started the season. Now they have like competent goalies again, but they're still like they lost to the Wild last night.
Yeah, you did.
They did.
The superior hockey
team.
But the Predators,
after Nate admittedly said the wheels of the wagon might be falling off, a couple weeks ago.
Oh, they fell off for a while. They got new ones off Amazon actually, though, like 8 of them. So
that's why
they were just trying to find the ones that fit. So.
But the Predators did actually end up beating the Wild here not too long ago. So by the transitive property,
we're not going to acknowledge the scoreline on that one, but things might have happened.
We can pretty sure it was
we
like
don't have
62.
To. No, that
pretty sure.
Numbers are imaginary sometimes.
Anyway,
so.
well, back to the construct thing. I do believe though by transitive property that means that if Colorado lost to the Wild, and then the Predators beat the Wild, that would mean that the Predators are actually better than both teams. So I don't make the rules; it's just how it is.
Cup
The math works. I mean, it's not wrong, but it's like, ugh.
Now I will say,
a little dirty.
Yeah,
it really does. Even as a fan of the Predators, it's like, I don't know about that one, Chief, but
Dak, they are not the worst team in the NHL.
They're not. And, I've succumbed this year that it's just going to be an off year. Unfortunately, I think the next few years, because I think they've got some long in the tooth contracts that are really going to come back to bite them for the next couple of years. But I don't know.
Wait a minute. Long in the tooth Predators? Oh, I see what he did there.
Planned.
Yeah, it sounded a little planned to me.
Honestly, the biggest switch
in Nashville.
Do they not have what?
Dentists in Nashville.
I don't know.
Zach.
I have no idea. I'm sure they do, but not for a saber tooth.
Those might be extinct.
That just seems a little exclusionary. But...
Yeah.
I don't make the rules.
I mean, you should.
No, I shouldn't.
I thought you were the editor. I thought that you made all the rules.
In terms of what we're doing here, I don't make those rules.
Oh, now I follow.
You guys put far too much faith into me.
And I'll continue.
We put the correct amount of faith in you.
You were.
I think it's the correct amount.
That's bold. That's very bold.
But with that, we will go over to the orange ball professionally. And I will let Zach start first and talk about his potential acquisition of old Jimmy Butler. Or maybe not. We don't know yet. We don't actually know what Jimmy Butler wants to do. All we know is Miami doesn't want him.
So legitimately, as of 15-ish minutes ago, the Suns acquired 3 first-round picks from the Jazz, and they're trading their 2031 first-rounders or something. I don't quite know all the details, but anyway, they just got 3 first-round picks, which can be assumed that it's going to be used for getting Jimmy Butler. Which I guess the Suns continue to be a baffling mystery.
To us because we're buying the Jazz, right?
Well, yes, but technically that hasn't happened yet. So, by legality rights here, I think we have to specify that it's going to the Jazz.
Okay.
Not necessarily to us.
Not our Jazz yet.
No, but they will be our draft picks.
They will be. As soon as someone finds the Patreon link, looking at you, listener.
Please, Zach is really
I'm back now. I'm watching you, listener.
I don't know how Zach has lasted this long, but he really
dumpster dives, my guy. Dumpster dives.
Oh, with the trash pandas.
Yeah. It's not going great. But anyway, the Suns continue to be a baffling mystery to me because on one hand, they'll have a game where they don't necessarily play out of their minds, but they play really well. They win, and then they'll play, another game and maybe win that one. It's just up and down roller coaster. It seems to be that, everybody thinks that Bradley Beal's the problem. I don't know if I agree with that. I certainly don't know if I agree with bringing in Jimmy Butler, but I also don't own the team for the Phoenix Suns, so I have no say in that matter. But I'm just like, I don't think when you may have a problematic locker room already with how the team is doing this year, and then bringing in another known problem in the locker room every now and then, who's also getting a little older. I don't know. But I think the other thing that I forgot to mention is that they acquired Nick, what's his name? Richards. And he's actually been a good addition to the team. Overall, I mean, it's not like they've necessarily won a bunch of games because of him, but he at least looks a little more competent. And it turns out that rebounding is still important in the NBA or in basketball in general. Who would have known?
It is.
When it seems like this is my ignorance with basketball, to be honest. I don't watch every single game out there, but it just seems like when I watch games randomly, not even just Suns games, just in general, seems like a bunch of teams just are like, that rebounding thing's for the birds. Like, I don't know, man. Seems like it might be important, but so
you'd think, especially when it's like the 7-footers that aren't doing the rebounding, you'd think they could maybe pull some weight, but
you would think. I don't know. And the other one, Nurkic continues to be out with the flu or whatever for like 3.5 weeks. Yeah, but not for 3 weeks. It's been a while since he's played, and so I think it's flu. I think he's either going to get traded or got cut or whatever, but who knows? We still got, I think, a couple weeks by the before the trade deadline hits, or just under 2 weeks. But yeah, the Suns are an anomaly at this point. I don't know, because they've got plenty of talent to be a really, really good team, but I don't know if they don't quite know a good rotation, where it seems like here every once in a while they figure it out with Bradley Beal coming off the bench, but that becomes a problem because he's being paid more than a bench player. So I don't know. I must be crazy, because if I was paid $30 million a year or whatever he paid to come off the bench and shoot a ball, hell yeah. I mean, he probably has to hit certain, criteria to keep making that money, whereas I wouldn't be able to do that. But, I wouldn't say no to 30 mil.
I don't think most people would.
Yeah.
I will say that is an incredible segue into the exact same thing is happening in Minnesota. Julius Randle's a little taller than Bradley Beal, but absolutely should be coming off the bench, but is also making a lot of money and is in a contract year and wants to make more money, and also has a player option that he can pick up after this year, which would cost the Minnesota Timberwolves a lot more money, and one of Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Naz Reid, and essentially screw them for the future. So if Julius Randle's on my team, after the trade deadline, I'll be very nervous, and after the draft, I'll be incredibly sad. Because the entire point of trading Cat away was to get more future financial flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
And if they keep a guy that is already not a great fit for the team, and he essentially nukes one of the contracts of a guy that would be good on the team, that would line up with Ant's timeline, would be real unfortunate. And the worst, I don't know, one of the worst things is like Naz Reid is kind of like the reason they got rid of Cat too, because they saw a lot of potential in him to be able to step into that similar Cat big man shooter role. And he has been able to, but they haven't started him because they don't want to make Julius sad. And we're like, 2 weeks away from the trade deadline now? And they haven't.
That's close.
And they haven't tried it. And there's a world where you keep Julius and he stays, and then you get rid of, or Naz walks because you have Julius Randle and he's not getting playing time. And then you didn't even try the lineup option that would in theory be your best one, or your like kind of lineup option moving into the future. So
right,
hopefully there are some smart people in the Timberwolves management that are asking these hard questions, but they're making me very nervous. And,
I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yeah.
The Wolves have never broken your heart.
No, they're in the second apron right now, paying the most money in the NBA, and they're currently one game above 500, which is not a great look when you're paying the most money in the NBA.
Are you trying to make a point here? I don't know if I'm quite catching it.
I mean,
if you could stop being so subtle, that would be great.
There is a world where they could bring back Julius, Nickeil, and Naz, but then you're going to be in the second apron again, and you're going to be paying a boatload of tax money for limited return, and then if you're in the second apron, you have all the restrictions on trading that you can't get back more money with any contracts than you get sending out, and I think it would be good personally to have flexibility when Ant is hitting his prime in a couple of years, rather than restricting yourselves to go all in on whatever the hell's happening this year.
Something about basketball?
Something about basketball. I wouldn't quite call it basketball yet, but something about basketball's happening.
They're trying, right?
I guess. And then to add on to it, like our sweet Prince Dante DiVincenzo, the big Ragu, turf toe, so grade 3 big toe or great toe sprain. So he's out.
How the hell did he get turf toe playing basketball?
Yes,
there's no turf.
Good questions. there was one little patch and he found it.
I feel like court toe would be the better name for that, but what do I know?
Zach, this is why you need to lead the people.
He was having a fantastic 2-3 week stretch here where he actually remembered how to shoot the ball and was being like an incredible playmaker and arguably the second best player on the team, and then he is gone now, and that makes me sad because he's just Ant has, the aura, the swagger, and Dante very much just kind of feeds into that. He's that same type of player, and it's nice to have that on the floor with Ant to kind of prop him up, especially when he's not hitting his shots and the things aren't going great. It gives that kind of second outlet to kind of prop things up. So we'll see what the future holds. They're sitting at 500. Hopefully they do something with the trade deadline. I am guessing because there was a news report that came out that the Wolves were interested in helping facilitate the Jimmy Butler trade.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that the picks that Phoenix got were, at least one or two of them, were like the picks we sent over in either the Rudy Gobert trade or the Mike Conley-Nikhil trade to Utah. So I think there's probably a fairly real world where we try to get those picks back. But I don't know what that would look like past that.
The other one I saw was that Beal might go to Milwaukee. So somehow in that realm of things, I don't know what Milwaukee would maybe give to like Minnesota, but it'd be like a 3 or 4 way team.
I don't really care what they
trade-off.
give to us as long as they take Julius. And that is, I would like to elaborate that is not an indictment on Julius. He's still a very good player. He just is a horrible fit for the team. And that's okay. He could with the Timberwolves, Ant has to be your number one. You can't have like a 1A, 1B, and they're trying to push him into like that 1B role, and that just isn't what they should be doing. So yeah, we'll see. They've been close in a lot of their like games recently with like Golden State and Memphis. Heartbreaking kind of losses, but they've at least been competitive with better teams, which is good to see. So yeah, hopefully something gets ironed out before February 6th, and I'll be a happy camper moving into next year, honestly.
Right.
Now for a complete tone shift.
Segue to Andy is actually the happiest camper in the NBA right now.
Man, it's so hard to carry the NBA segment on my back. God.
The only way he could be any happier is if he was actually a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, because they're just slightly better by like 1 game.
They are like a game or half a game better than the Thunder right now in terms of overall record. But I know last time we talked, the Thunder were about to go into that stretch where they're about to play like, the top 3 teams in the East, all in the span of like 4 games, which they came out of that stretch only losing to Cleveland once by 7 points. And then the rematch last week against Cleveland, they boat raced them. So they split the season series with the Cleveland 1-1. Definitely, they're the only way they'd see them in the playoffs is in the championship. But, they go on that stretch. They sweep the Knicks, both home and away. They beat Boston the first time. I don't think they play Boston again until like sometime in March. But they beat Boston. So Thunder obviously are very dependent on being healthy. If they're healthy, they're good. Now we've seen kind of the past week, Isaiah's been out with like a calf strain. He'll probably be back either sometime this week or very early next week. They were only limited to him for about a week, so he'll be back soon. Chet is now going to be evaluated again at about 3 to 5 weeks, which puts him right either at the All-Star break or right the first game after the All-Star break. My guess with how they're doing, and Nate and I had talked about this before, that they'll probably just be conservative and just hold them off until after the All-Star break. If he's fully healthy by then, just to get him back in the swing. Because the Thunder really don't need the help right now. Obviously it'd be nice to have a nice backup to Isaiah when he's not on the floor. But they've got a healthy enough lead in the standings that they can, kind of slice and dice their way into the All-Star break, managing somewhat healthy bodies here. So I know Shea's missed a game. J-Dub's missed a game recently, which is kind of some minor hand injuries. So nothing too concerning. Alex is finally back and healthy. So as long as he can stay healthy, it just adds another defensive piece for the team leading defensive team in the league right now. So all is well in Thunderland, except the Mavericks are now, I think, them and the Rockets, I think, are easily becoming their hatred of teams that they do not like playing. Most recently, just because they did lose to Dallas, but that was the PJ Washington game where he decided to actually shoot 70% from the field and go off. And then if you look at the other like 4 average games that PJ Washington has played, he averaged like less than 30% from the field. So I don't know why you chose the Thunder to go off. It did. It happened. But I mean, the that game kind of got chippy. You know, Kyrie and Alex were yelling at each other. So I think that's kind of a subtle new undertone of rivalry that the Thunder and Mavs are trying to get. And they play, I think, again this week.
That's like a pretty like close rivalry.
Yeah, and that's why I think the Rockets are up there too. But the Rockets more or less just because I hate everybody on that team. Sagan, whatever you want to call it.
Şengün is the softest player in the NBA. Still,
he doesn't deserve to get his name called, right? So, but yeah, those undertone rivalries are basically just because of the close proximity to OKC, and you know, since they moved from Seattle, I mean, there really hasn't been like an established rivalry, long-term franchise rivalry for the Thunder. You know, they've been in OKC for a while, but you know, it's not like, you know, you have the Celtics and Lakers are obviously, you know, long time rivalry. It's not like you have something like that. The Oklahoma City has something to back up against. So,
and no offense to the Thunder, but until like the last year, they've kind of been not great.
Well, yeah,
like Al Horford and Alexei Bokushevsky.
Yeah, and obviously, again, I have not cared until Alex was on the Thunder, but there are some times that I see from like random Thunder accounts that they're like they show the like lineup from like 5 years ago, and it's like people you have never heard of, nor I think are even playing in the NBA still.
Yep. There were some dark days between KD, Russ, Harden, and now.
So definitely, I'm enjoying the season. I'm sure you know the local Thunder fan base are definitely enjoying the young team, and you know they still got probably another year or two before they have to seriously start thinking about contract money expansion and everything, because I think Shea and Chet are under contract for at least till 2026. I think obviously Alex got that extension this offseason. Isaiah probably is under contract, I think, through some point. So a lot of your core top pieces are still under contract through at least another season that you don't have to worry about. So it's after the next season, then you have to start worrying about, well, how can we keep this core together if they do well this year and next year?
And you do have like 40 first-round picks still the next 2 years.
Sam, their GM, Sam Prestige, or I think that's how you say his last name. He's definitely going to be up for like exec of the year, and rightfully so, just for how well the Thunder have done and how well he's done accumulating all of these draft picks that nobody wanted. That he was like, I'm just going to sit and buy my time, and then have all these draft pieces to my dispense if I want to use them. But yeah, it's been fun. You know, like I said, they've got Utah and Dallas this week. And I think they go on a West Coast trip. I think they're going to be out in Sacramento sometime soon, though, Nate.
Let's go. Sacramento's been like they've been on a tear the past
since they fired their coach.
Hey, that needed to happen. Let's be
it is weird how well they've done since they fired their coach.
Yeah, their rotations to start the season were
questionable.
Bad, I believe is what they're called.
Especially since they got DeMar DeRozan in the offseason. You're like, that's actually going to pair well with De'Aaron Fox. And
they're like, let's give Buggy McBuckets more minutes.
Yeah.
Turns out maybe that wasn't the best idea.
Right. So, yeah, there'll be that. And then we'll get to February where Nate and I's teams play in a span of a week 3 times.
8 games in 2 days, I'm pretty sure.
So that's gonna be a fun week for us to live, because the NBA is super smart at scheduling.
Yep. And why have a back-to-back in the same city when can fly to different cities every night
to play the same team?
Yep.
You guys are thinking about this far too logically.
You're right. You're right. Why would they ever consult people that actually would know a logical way to fix it?
Yep. It's just how it be. So
because it's either logistics or spend a bunch of money for product. Come on now.
And I've always given Adam Silver the benefit of the doubt. He's like one of the actual better commissioners of any of the major professional leagues, in terms of like expanding the game and, you know, getting people to care about the NBA. You know, and we all hate Roger Goodell, whether we actually do hate him or not. You're supposed to hate him. And Manfred, up until like this past season, I thought was actually doing a pretty good job until the whole uniform fiasco and the whole salary cap thing that he refuses to address.
What?
But yeah, fun time for the Thunder. I'm loving that basketball season. That so far they aren't hurting me quite yet. It might come, but they aren't quite there yet. And I hope that it doesn't happen.
It's funny that you say that though, Andy, because I'm going to take over your segue for a team that may actually break your heart a little bit.
Oh, they already are.
Over to college basketball, which is mainly just our college basketball for Nebraska segment at this point. Because
I definitely do remember the last time that I talked was right before the UCLA game, where I encouraged our listeners to give this team a chance to maybe Saturday will be fun and they'll pull off the upset, and which they did. They did pull off that upset.
What did we
been
learn?
Since
they heard that I picked them to not cover, so they wanted to play them, and then I didn't pick anything after, and then they forgot how to play.
And then they played Iowa, and something about that game, in which they lost, which rightfully so was a very bad loss, considering everything. Something about that moment of that second half broke the entire team. I don't know what, I don't know how, it just happened. Because the past 4 games since that Iowa loss have been bad basketball. Purdue, I expected them to lose, but I did not expect them to.
That is emphatically
boat raced out of Mackey Arena, but they sure did. They found a way. And then I said, oh, yeah, they're going to have a nice quad 3 home opportunity in PBA where they can't lose, and they haven't lost in a year and a half. And then they lost to a bad Rutgers team. Now, granted, I will give Ace Bailey and Harper their dues. They're probably going to be NBA future picks next season. So those 2 dudes are good, but the rest of the Rutgers team is not good. And Nebraska found a way to lose to them. And then, I didn't have much hope to go on the road against Maryland, and they surprisingly kept it close all game. And then they had 2 chances to win, and they just said, we're not going to play basketball anymore. Why would we do that?
I get that.
And then they lost to Maryland. So Nebraska ball is currently on a 4-game winning streak since I told people to tune into the team. So
opposite of winning streak.
Yes. Yes, the opposite of a winning streak. They're on a losing streak. So I will make my statement now. Please do not pay attention to Nebraska ball. Please do not watch the games. Turn away, and that should help them start winning again. I told people to watch after the UCLA game, or to watch the UCLA game and after, because this is a fun team. Then after that game, they lost everything. So please do not tune in to them. Please ignore everything about them until we get to March Madness, and then we'll talk about it again.
I will give one the benefit of the doubt here. I have not been able to tune into a game since that UCLA game.
So it's Nate's fault.
So we'll see tomorrow. I'll do my best. But we'll see. There's a chance. If they lose tomorrow, nobody watch ever again.
It sucks. And all jokes aside, it sucks that they were 12-2 or 12-3 going into this stretch, and then all of a sudden you're now 2-5 in the conference, 12-6 overall, and what you thought was, you maybe needed 7 wins to start the conference slate is now absolutely more dire that you need 7 wins, and your remaining schedule is getting bleaker and bleaker in terms of who you're playing and where you're playing at. And as of right now, my confidence meter, barring a 8-game winning streak to make the tournament, is not good right now. A little panic is setting in over what has happened with the team in terms of them trying to make the tournament. They're not completely out of it yet, but just the way that they have played the past 4 games has not told me that they are ready to make the tournament. And it sucks because you brought back Bryce and Juwan for their senior years, and Bryce has not played. I think the conference league has figured out how to play Bryce, and he just has not been the same as he has been since he opened the slate. Jawan is taking an ungodly amount of threes for God knows what reason. When he is definitely a post bruiser and just needs to drive and attack the rim. I don't know why he's taking the threes. And then Burke and Maya are just they're tall people that maybe play basketball from time to time. I don't know what else they're out there for.
Called that on Maya.
Yeah. Andrew Morgan is the only center that is actually worth playing 40 plus minutes a game. Because he's actually physical in the post and can actually make turnaround jump shots, things at the rim. He's actually worth playing. The other two, I don't know. They're out there. They're tall bodies.
I mean, at least Berke is at least a sophomore.
Yeah. And
he has room to grow.
He's at that awkward height.
Flashes.
Yeah, like he's just at an awkward height where like he's athletic enough, but he's almost too tall for what he wants to do in terms of like shooting. He's just like it's almost like Wemby. Like Wemby is incredibly tall and an alien, but it's like you can almost be too tall for the athletic ability that you want to do. Wemby, is actually athletic and can do things, but sometimes like you see him running, you're like, that's like not normal for a person. That's because they're massive and tall people. So
he's just too gangly for his own good.
He is. And Burke,
I mean, that's a real thing.
Said, has shown flashes that he's actually good at making shots and being a post and down low. And then there's other times you're like, why are you handling the ball? So there's no constant, consistency. Yeah, there's no consistency with how they play. So that's my Nebraska ball segment. They've got USC at home tonight before they go on an incredible 3-game stretch against ranked teams. 2 on the road and 1 at home. If you steal one of those games, I'll be happy.
Who knows?
At this point, you might have to steal one of those games.
Maybe this is where they suddenly turn it around.
I was going to say there is
nothing more.
There are at least 13 games left in conference that there's a lot of variability, and we've seen that they have been able to play competent basketball. And from what I've heard, at least, it seems like they've kind of just, and this was kind of my concern with the team overall, is that they're a good team, but individually, outside of like Bryce and Juwan, gets a little. And so if they're not playing together as well and the defense isn't as sound, then other teams can attack those points and really just break the team open. So,
and the Iowa, Rutgers, and Maryland games, they've all, Iowa ended up being a 10-point loss, but, they went to overtime in that game. So, 3 of those games you had possessions to tie or win the game. And, Bryce can be that dude, but I don't think as a team as a whole, they don't have like that ice in the veins type player that can go out there and, on that possession, like this is who you're giving the ball to either set up the play and run for an open look or get you the shot that you want to win or tie the game. They don't have that type of player. And they could change. You would certainly think Bryce or Jawan would be one of those two, just because they're your most veteran guys. But outside of the game tying 3 that Bryce hit against Iowa to send it to overtime, he had a costly turnover against Rutgers. He didn't. I don't know if he didn't have the ball against Maryland, but there was no thought to get him the ball against Maryland to try to tie the game either. So it's Fred probably trying to figure out how to run the offense, too. But what's more concerning is their defense has just been torched from 3 of the past 4 games. And I know I texted you guys the stat. Nebraska is 12-0 this season when opponents are held under 40% from 3-point land. And Nebraska is 0-6 when opponents shoot over 40% from 3-point land. And if you look at their record, they are exactly 12-6.
Yep, that sounds about right.
Call me crazy, but it sounds like there's a stat there that they can use to kind of do some game planning with. Might be something to look into. Fred.
As much as, this game plan worked against Creighton, and they got lucky that Creighton had an off night from 3, but the whole defense this year for Fred has been like double the post, or, you double down low and you leave the skip past perimeter people open, hoping that they don't miss, or hoping that they miss. But the past 4 games, that has not worked out because teams have not missed. And, towards the end of the Maryland game, he kind of adjusted that to where, it was just straight man on man at the end. And, Maryland didn't get as many open 3 looks, but it might have been too little too late at that point. So I guess we'll see against USC on Wednesday night here what the adjustments are made. It's not a guaranteed win. It just helps that it's at home, but they just lost at home to a 9-8 Rutgers team. So at this point, nothing's kind of guaranteed for the team anymore. They're going to have to literally go out and take it and, get the fan base back on their side because it's looking a little bleak right now in terms of trying to make the tournament. So with that,
you must figure it out.
They do. They got, like Nate said, they got 13 more conference games plus the conference tournament, assuming you make it to the conference tournament. What I recently learned over the broadcast is the bottom 3 teams in the conference standings do not make the conference tournament now since we expanded. So as long as you are not the bottom 3, you will make the conference tournament. But you don't want to be, Nebraska got lucky last year and get in the top 4 and you get that double round bye, which was huge. So probably unless you run the rest of the way right now, the shot of that's probably not there anymore. You at least want to try to get a bye come conference tournament time. So with that, I think we're going to do professional foosball or college foosball. I'll leave it up to you two.
I'd say college just because it's wrapped up.
Okay. So
and really the only thing of note that's happened recently was the championship game. So
yes, which thrilling championship game if you were not a Notre Dame fan, I guess. It's really about how I could describe it. It is kind of remarkable that, Ohio State not even a month ago lost to, well, I guess over a month ago, lost to their rivals, Michigan, 6-6 Michigan team, or a 6-5 Michigan team at that point, something like that. But either way, they lost to Michigan, and the heavy discussion talks of fire Ryan Day were heavy amongst the national media crowd. And 4 games later, Ohio State is the college football playoff champions, the first 12-team expanded champions. So I hope their fan base has probably calmed down a little bit. It's not great that he has lost to Michigan his entire tenure, but he won a national championship. So it's like tomato.
Are you allowed to rescind death threats after they win a championship, or how does that work?
I think
I'm going to go with no.
Man.
My guess is that the court of law does not care that you are sorry for it now.
But you're happy now, right? So
right.
It cancels out, I'm pretty sure, or something like that. Right?
I saw an opinion piece, speaking of that, that someone said today that Ryan Day should go to the NFL and leave the Ohio State fan base now that he's done the thing for him. And I'm like, that would be funny.
Would be very funny. It'd be stupid, but it'd be funny.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, he's proven that he can do it at the college level. I mean, him going to the NFL wouldn't surprise me at all. Although for the teams that are open now, I'd be like, maybe not for them. But
and we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, it's kind of incredible the run that Ohio State went through. I mean, they demolished Tennessee, boat raced Oregon, which I don't think anybody saw coming. Definitely not me. I thought Oregon was going to boat race the other way around. And then they handled Texas, and then they, up until like the last fourth quarter when Ohio State kind of got conservative. I mean, they dominated that entire Notre Dame game. So they are your national champions, which I'm not one to call out Paul Feinbaum for thinking that his Southeastern Conference is the best conference out there. I'm just going to proffer this theory to Paul that the Big Ten has won back-to-back national championships and the Southeastern Conference has not. So
seems like it might not actually mean more.
Yeah, it might not mean more. I think the Big Ten might mean more. That's just my theory. And the stats that I have to prove is that Ohio State and Michigan are your back-to-back national champions, both notably of the Big Ten Conference and not the Southeastern Conference. So if you also want to go look at Matt Rule's latest post of him dunking on Paul Feinbaum, it's a 40-second clip. It's very funny. He sure did, and I suggest everybody go look at it because it was from a preseason clip that Matt Rule said at Big Ten Media Days that the Big Ten should get 4 teams in the conference, the playoff championship every year, because the Big Ten is the best conference out there. And then obviously Paul Feinbaum came back. He's like, yeah, whatever. Why was he such an idiot for saying that, so on and so forth. And I'm just saying, look who won the national championship. It was a Big Ten team. And most notably not a Southeastern Conference team.
Not even just that. Look at who made it to the Final Four of the
just
playoff.
one.
Yep.
It was just Texas. I mean, and as we all know, horns down forever and always, and Texas loves to choke. And I don't think they're going to be good at next year because I don't think Arch Manning's that good either. I think they had to catch the lightning in a bottle this year with Quinn Ewers, and they did not. Which
did we just hear a hot take from Andy there?
I did. I did say that the Manning legacy quarterback name is not going to be good next year. Because if we remember that he was holding out on a video game because he didn't want to be included in it and make money off of it because he's an idiot. Something tells me that he's not going to make good football decisions in real life if he can't make good financial ones about a football game that he doesn't have to play. So don't get me wrong. I love the Manning name, most notably because the sheriff runs Denver. So I can't ever speak bad mouth about that one. And the other one has beaten Tom Brady twice and is elite. So
I mean, I can't argue with any of this.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's my hot take. I don't think Texas will be good next year.
And I don't know. There was a second hot take in there. I mean, Eli Manning, he did beat Tom Brady twice, but elite?
He has 2 Super Bowls, Zach. Joe Flacco has 1, and Joe Flacco's elite.
I was going to say, I will. That is fair. 2 Super Bowls is already hard enough to
Can you beat Tom Brady while doing both of them? That's pretty hard to do.
Fair enough. I don't know though. There were some questionable years in there. Let's just say it that way.
Well, yeah, you gotta build up to the good ones. You can't.
I think the questionable years came there at the end.
Well, that's because they thought Daniel Jones was gonna be good.
He was for that one playoff game.
How many years ago was that now? And I get to say that because
now look where he's at, funny. Nate. He's with you,
friend.
But what I wanted to ask you guys was, now that college football is all said and done, and we had our first iteration of the 12-team playoff. What were our thoughts and opinions about it? How did we like it? How did we think the seeding was? What are some maybe profitable or some changes that we would like to see next year in terms of whether seeding or more campus games, so on and so forth. But before I give my opinion on that, throw it to one of you two just to see, what if we need to change anything. Do we need to go to 16 teams? Do we like it at 12? I'm
going to let Nate go first, but we need to preface this with we're giving our opinion on the 12-team playoff now because there's absolutely going to be changes next year. No doubt. Whatever that means, there's going to be changes to it somehow for some reason. So what we got this year, whatever we think about it, not going to matter next year. So away with it, Sir Nate.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope you guys are ready for a 64-team college football playoff. It's been successful for March Madness. They make a lot of money off it.
December Madness.
Money is the reason for playing football in college.
It is.
So why not make all of the money off of it?
You're right.
Every team should make probably the playoff and just go from there. You can slap ads every 2 minutes on every game like that and probably do something.
Man, this is genius. This is a genius idea.
Right.
I feel like I feel like I don't need
a quadruple bye to your top 4 teams.
We saw how that works for Oregon.
Just start the playoff in October. Play three games before to really get a read on who's good or not.
Guys, we're overthinking.
SEC gets at least 2 FCS games though because
near the end of the season.
A little scary to play actual teams, but Yeah, it's profit and then profit more. I don't know what else we want here.
You know what? I think I'm gonna go the opposite direction and say I think we're overthinking this. Like the playoff is a good idea, but I think there's some better ones out there. What if we just started the playoffs? I'm putting it in quotes because technically, the beginning of the season, it's got to be its own thing. What if we took the entire season and then at the end of the season, like the regular season, we had a bunch of like coaches and writers and stuff that all voted on what games they should go into. And then arguably the top two teams could be the national championship, and so on and so forth.
Well, but I think the best idea would be to make sure that the computer decides what those top two teams are. Probably some like really obscure algorithm that nobody really knows how, but it spits out a number, and you're like, oh yeah, see, they're like I don't know, we call like maybe a bowl championship series or something.
Hey, you might be onto something.
Maybe a shorter acronym that most people can just call it, like a BCS or something like that.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Guys, I think we've got $1 million idea here. We might almost have $1 billion idea here if we just go and sell this.
And then we can have potential bowl games that would pair like a group of 5 team against a power 5 team that would be like an upset of a century and like a Fiesta Bowl or something like that, where we get like a famous play and we name a play after like a historical landmark or something like that.
Ooh, I'm interested.
Yeah. So
it's a really good thing that nothing like this has ever happened in the history of college football.
Right?
That's why we're throwing the idea.
The first time where everyone's hearing about this. Yeah.
Yes.
This is why people need to listen to our genius.
We are the #1 sports podcast. Like I don't.
Yeah.
They already are. Like your rating approval just motivates us to come up with these ideas for our listeners.
They should honestly just expect it from us every time. Like at this point.
I'm surprised we're not getting more phone calls, to be honest.
It's 2025. Who does a phone call?
Sorry, email. I'd prefer an email.
Yes.
Oh,
maybe a fax.
Yeah, I have a fax machine.
Morse
some
code
dial-up,
me.
So
to actually answer your question, though, Andy, for me, which really makes this upsetting because they've already talked about toying with whether they keep it 12 teams, go to 6 teams, whatever, 16 teams, whatever. They've already talked about toying with it. So it's like, it's coming. Something's going to change. But I thought 12 teams is about perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe if like we were to expand it, I'd say maybe 14, I guess. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I think 16 is too much. But I think 12 is about the perfect number. And I thought the seeding was about perfect too. Even with the lopsided scores that we saw, that's the whole point though. Like teams that are higher seeded in theory should almost usually, the one that everybody points to, I think, is Boise State being higher than Penn State by seeding. Yeah. But I mean, there was a statistical thing on paper where you could say, well, Boise State could and potentially should win this game. They didn't, but I don't know. I didn't disagree with any of it.
Yeah. But I'm on same boat. If anything, maybe like you could almost argue like down to 8 instead of expanding. But I was fine with it. I really enjoyed. Again, I was in a different country in the future technically, so things got weird.
To tell us any of the final scores, so we could go maybe put some points on them and maybe win some money.
Well, that's probably illegal.
That wasn't in Back to the Future.
It's only illegal. It's only illegal if you get caught, guys. Come on.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, why can Marty and Doc do it and then go back and make a lot of money like Biff did?
I believe because that was a movie.
No, Zach, that was real. Like, what are you talking about?
I'm pretty sure that happened.
Like, yeah, clearly, like those things happened in real life. Like, I don't.
Yeah,
it
was a film, but it was a documentary, obviously.
A biopic, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, that one.
About the legendary Doc Brown.
Yes.
Yeah. Mostly about his hair.
Yeah.
All correctly.
Hey man, that's some sick hair.
Well, it's true.
And
true.
coming from your source of really nice hair. Given that title given to me by myself, by the way.
It is.
Clearly I know.
I have never said those words to him.
Not in that order, but you've
not in that
said it
order,
before.
but we have said those words, but not in that order directed at Zach.
So again, by transitive property, I'd say technically you've said it. So I think that's
the maths, I guess.
Yeah. That's right. But no, I overall liked it. Like I said, I didn't get to watch as intensely as I probably would have where I was in a country that YouTube TV recognizes as legitimate to be able to watch things. But that's a whole other discussion. Yeah, I still think it's cool that they have like the on-campus matchups in the first round. Like, I mean, they weren't particularly close games for the most part, but it adds that extra, I don't know, just flavor of actual, college football to it. It's not just this, I don't know, sterile kind of NFL type product. Where it's like, because even NFL teams, they go to like the home teams until the Super Bowl. That's like that.
Right.
You have that home field advantage. You actually get your home crowd into it, and you don't have seats selling for $8,000 a piece. So you have the actual fans that can actually show up to the games, and not just these celebrities that think it's cool to have an outing while a football game's going on.
Right.
So yeah, I'm fine with it. 12 seemed good.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I like the amount of teams. I like that. And the biggest complaint that I saw online was like, the first round games weren't, close or competitive. I mean, so on and so forth. And yeah, why they, probably mostly were blowouts. I mean, you look at, the NFL wildcard round this year. I mean, there weren't particularly close games at all in the wildcard. So
it's how playoffs work sometimes.
Yeah, and that's just I mean, it is what it is, and the most overused joke I saw after the NFL games were like, but the committee didn't want to put the Chargers or the Broncos in. It said Alabama, like so on and so forth. And it's like, yeah, that joke got old after a while, but I mean, it's the same idea. It's like, you're gonna have games that are blowouts in the playoffs. I mean, it happens. Not every divisional game, not every Super Bowl, not every conference title game is going to be close. I mean, if we all remember that Rams Patriots Super Bowl years ago, that was like a 10-3 game. That was a god awful Super Bowl game.
It was fun from like the defensive side of things, but
yeah.
Man, like you need some of that offensive flash to like. I love good defensive games, but like you also want some like solid offensive flashes to like level it out.
Right.
That wasn't that. That was just bare knuckle dragging on the ground type game. And again, love it. But for a Super Bowl, it's like, I don't know, Jim.
Right. And it's, I also go back to when before Denver won their Super Bowl, I mean, the Super Bowl 2 years ago where they got like demolished by the Seahawks. I mean, that was like a 43-8 game or something like that. I mean, that wasn't, it was a Super Bowl, but it was not a particularly close Super Bowl at all. So, not every single game's going to be like that, whether you put more teams in it or not, or take it away. I don't want them to ever go back to 4 again. I mean, that just was so much more for debate. If they had to change things, I mean, I probably see them changing the seeding of how teams get seeded 1 through 12. What do you give the guarantee to the conference winners? Do you not? Do you take that away? Do you add more more home games for like the second round of games instead of making those bowl games instead? Do you leave the bowl games for the Final Four and the championship instead? So, I mean, it'd be cool if they added the more, a second round of home games so that those teams that get that automatic bye, their reward isn't a bowl game. It's a home campus game for the second round instead of, making it a Rose Bowl game or something like that. Maybe just more incentives for teams that get the bye if you keep the buys. Because like Zach said, in the NFL, your incentive for getting the 1 seed is home field advantage until the Super Bowl. So maybe there needs to be an extra incentive of a home game for teams that get those first 4 buys instead of, getting to the playoffs, but then you got to go to a bowl game at a neutral site instead. So, but yeah, overall, I like that there were 12 teams, if they go to 16, which I imagine that's probably going to happen at some point, it'll be back to how they seed the 1 through 16 again. And, do you put more guaranteed conference people in? Do you put more group of 5 people in? Do you put more automatic qualifiers, so on and so forth? Or how do you figure that out, and who figures that out is the bigger thing too. So
Paul Feinbaum.
Yes.
That's who figures it out.
The entire SEC and then ACC and then Big 12 and then maybe the Big 10 gets in.
I'm just hoping that if they do if they keep 12 teams, but they're like, we want to make changes, I'm fine with that. Like depending on what they do with seeding, like how they're going to do it, because again, like what we've kind of not really said, but I think everybody's aware of, is that this is just the first year of the 12-team playoff. So assume maybe we'll see this for a couple more years before it expands. Inevitably is going to expand. We know it's going to. But if anything, it's really going to be interesting how they do that, because I think we've had this discussion before where now that the NIL thing is real and there are people that are third string, unlike in Ohio State or Notre Dame, that would be like, well, I'm not going to get to play next year. They'll transfer and go play it somewhere like Nebraska or a Kentucky or whatever, like just throwing out random examples. Not so much Nebraska, but, I think there's going to be a lot more parity in college football than we realize. I don't think it's necessarily going to hit next year per se, but, I mean, we'll see some of it next year, but we're already kind of seeing it, but it'll be interesting because I think that's really going to make the playoffs super interesting. So like Boise State being as good as they were this year, they could be even better well, maybe, but they could potentially be even better next year, more well-rounded, and not have to rely on Jonty the whole time.
Right. And if you technically look at Notre Dame and Ohio State, they were technically the 7 and 8 seeds in the playoff. Then you're like, oh, those are like, quote unquote, maybe Cinderella teams or teams that weren't picked to win it that made it to the championship. Even though if you watched any of college football this year, you're like, no, those are teams that were powerhouses most of the year. So you wouldn't consider them yeah.
I think they should kind of just do away with the seeding aspect of it and do like what the NFL does now, where like, I guess, I don't know, but like when I watched the Eagles game, which we'll get there, but when I watched the Eagles game, they didn't have numbers. They didn't have like the seeding numbers or anything. And I think they might still be there on the broadcast, but basically at this point, it's you're in the playoffs. They have to do the seeding to set everybody up into the bracket. But after that, it's just like, they should just take the numbers away after that first round and just be like, that's where we're at. So that'd be what I'd do.
Yeah. I mean, it's all up. I'll be very interested to see what they discuss in their off season now, of what changes they're going to try to implement before next season, or if they're just going to leave it and push everything to 2026 to change it. But knowing college football, it'll probably be for the 2025 season, because that's just what they do. They just love making whimsical, fun decisions on the fly and not thinking about the long-term course action or repercussions. They're just like, we're just going to do this for this season, and then we'll figure it out later.
I think there's a metaphor there, but
yeah, there might be.
It's funny that you say that, though, because, again, stealing your segue here, but with the professional NFL, this is before we even get to the games themselves. There was a recent interview done with Roger Goodell, says the next logical step in the NFL is adding an 18th game.
Oh yeah.
It's like, what?
And if you do that, like you have to put 2 bye weeks in. I mean,
you would hope
you cannot have an 18-week schedule and have 1 bye, especially if they want to start expanding, the London, Munich, Berlin, Brazil, I think they had an African promo at one point, somewhere in there. But if you want to start expanding to literal foreign countries, I mean, you're gonna have to put multiple bye weeks in a schedule.
Don't understand why we need to do that when we're just gonna send the Jaguars over to freaking England 4 times. I mean, what's it matter?
The London Jaguars just need to be a permanent thing, and I think we just all, I've accepted that it's gonna happen because that's just what they are. But it won't happen, but it should happen. But yeah, segue to the NFL now. So playoffs are in full swing. All of us had our playoff teams in, which we'll all go over our season recaps. Well, 2 of our season recaps. One is still currently in the playoffs. But we'll quickly kind of recap the games, and then Nate and I can kind of go into our season overall before we decide to talk about the conference championship games. So Yeah, wild card weekend, like we had mentioned before, wasn't really a whole lot of competitive games, but that's what you get. The only quote unquote competitive one was the Commanders Bucks, where Commanders won on that walk off doinked in field goal. But you want to make it to the playoffs, but you never know what's going to happen when we make it to the playoffs. You can't ever guarantee competitive games, but the teams that do make it to the playoffs are competitive good teams because they got to the playoffs. But how they match up, it is what it is. But the Chargers kind of manhandled the Chargers. The Texans manhandled the Chargers.
Jim Harbaugh beat himself.
Yeah, I mean, he really did in the second half. The Chargers did lead that entire first half until the end, and then the second half, the Texans took over.
The ghost of Brandon Staley took over, I believe is what you mean.
Yes, is what happened. The Steelers continued their end of the season downward skid and into the playoffs and continued to lose to the Ravens in the playoffs. Zach's Eagles beat the Packers squarely, handedly, so on and so forth, whatever you want to call it. My team, like I said, was happy that they just got to the playoffs. That first quarter was really fun for Denver, and then Josh Allen happened, and I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense for what happened in that game. And then Nate's game
was also happy that they made the playoffs.
Yes. And then Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings offensive line decided not to show up in the worst possible time of the season.
Happens.
And then we get to the divisional rounds that just happened this past weekend. The Chiefs, with the help of the almighty NFL Goodell refs, got away out of Arrowhead with a
no, they earned it, Andy. Fair and square.
Fair and square. They earned it fair and square. Yes. Nobody can touch the almighty Patrick Mahomes type game. They earned it fair and square. And then you get to that Sunday or Saturday night game, and a game that I knew Detroit had concerns on defense, but I did not think they had that big of concerns on defense, especially with what they did to the Vikings in Week 18. I was like, all right, Detroit might be all right. So that's probably more of a testament to how bad Minnesota was.
Issues may have made it a little longer.
And then that game happened. I'm like, oh, what happened to Detroit was because Minnesota was bad Week 18 versus Detroit being bad. And then you get to the Sunday games where the snowiest of snow games that I have ever watched in real life happened with the Rams and Eagles, which was chef's kiss, no notes, beautiful game in that second half of snow. And I know Zach, obviously, we're going to get
some of that sentiment.
Yes, we'll let Zach have his piece to talk about his team here when we talk about the conference championship games. But yeah, that was beautiful snow event that happened in Philly. And I know I texted you guys when this happened after the Stafford fumble that team that plays in Dome and plays on West Coast surprisingly does not do well in cold and snow. Believe it or not.
Could have fooled me.
Could have fooled any of us. And then you have the Sunday night banger where it came down to the Bills and Ravens, and Mark Andrews having the two inopportune times to one fumble and two drop the game-tying 2-point conversion on an attempt that he was mostly, if not all the way wide open, that he just straight dropped.
Yep.
But then that leads us to our conference championship games. You have on the NFC side, you have Zach's Eagles versus the very frisky rookie-led Jaden Daniel Washington Commanders. And then you have the two-time Super Bowl champ, back-to-back champs, Chiefs going up against Josh Allen and the frisky Bills, and the Bills trying to get over that hump of one, beating Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, and two, trying to get back to the Super Bowl for the first time in God knows when. Probably since they lost those 4 straight. Yeah, probably since when they lost those 4 straight Super Bowls in the 90s. So with that, Zach, we'll turn it over to you before Nate and I talk about our season recaps of, Philly's run in the playoffs so far and your upcoming game against the Commies.
Well, I'll go back and start with the snow game because I enjoyed, like any good football fan does, watching the snow game. It's funny. It came out, I think, either today or yesterday that all the players were like, yeah, that sucked. Like, players hate playing in it, but man, does it make a fun game to watch on TV. I get it. It's so much fun to watch, but yeah, playing in it is awful.
My favorite part was like you could see kind of right before halftime it's starting to snow, and then literally as progressively each minute went by, I'm like, oh, it is snowing a lot harder.
They cut away, for the halftime ads and stuff, and then did their back at the studio like updates, and then they went back to the field and showed it like, hey, we're gonna start the second half, and it was all white. I'm like, holy cow! There was no preparation for that. It was just there it is.
And NFL halftimes are like notoriously shorter than most halftimes in professional sports. I mean, I think NFL halftimes are like 12 minutes or less.
Yeah,
I mean, they are short halftimes.
But so anyway, great game to watch. Definitely did not do great with my heart health there at the end. Waiting until letting them get to whatever it was, the 24, and let them, go on 4th and 10 or whatever it was. The thing I take away from that though is that the Eagles were playing conservatively on defense in the sense of like, stay with your man, don't get burned because of the snow. Just stay upright essentially. Which, I get it, but also it's playoff football. All the teams that are in the playoffs at this point are good, obviously. Or if they're not good, they're at least doing something well enough to continue on. And at this point, we're talking about the last 4 teams to get to the Super Bowl.
Right.
So we're right there on the cusp of that. And the Eagles are once again knocking on the doorstep, which is exciting. And of course, I'm here for it. But
I hope you would be.
I mean, yeah.
That was very convincing.
Well, I'm trying to. It was crazy because I'm still like after the game on Sunday, I was just like, oh my god, my heart was racing. I think I got like a warning on my watch, even like high heart rate, and I'm like, yeah, I get it. But no, so going up against the Commanders, arguably, I think a revenge game for the Eagles. It's at home.
Did you guys go 1-1 in the season?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I arguably in my head a revenge game for the Eagles because they lost the last time against Washington. And it's funny because a lot of Washington fans are like, oh, we beat the Eagles. Like, yeah, but we didn't have Jalen Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
So not that Jalen Hurts is the greatest quarterback in the world by any means, but like he just finds ways to win, and he continues to show that. Even in the down year that was last year, they were still finding ways to win in certain games that they shouldn't have. So
speaking of that, is he healthy I know he had like a knee injury coming out of that game.
I don't think they've explicitly said.
I think the first injury reports for Sunday games, the teams don't have to start until Wednesday.
Okay.
So they have to officially release something for injury reports.
But I guess the radio station in Philadelphia, I guess Nick Sirianni called into that and kind of hinted that Jalen was fine. Okay. Probably just needs some rest and stuff. Might be like questionable come like tomorrow.
I get it.
Yeah, basically.
My guess is the 44-yard QB bootleg for a touchdown play probably will not be run right out of the gates like it was this past game.
Probably not. Well, hopefully. I mean, that's going to be the I think Jalen will be the deciding factor in that game too, because as long as Frankie Louvu doesn't try to take him out again, well, he did successfully last time.
Mm-hmm. You also have this guy called like Saquon Barkley that's like really good at running the ball too.
And he didn't push though.
Yeah,
probably.
You do need him to push, Jalen. Unfortunately, for a guy that can squat 400 pounds, just give the ball to him at the 1-yard line. But what do I know?
Well, see, this goes back to that whole discussion we've had about offensive coordinators through the past year, where it seems like they get to the 1-yard line, and like the Eagles are pretty good at this. They'll be like, this is where we push, but like they didn't on Sunday too much because I would assume the footing wasn't that great in the snow. Along with Jalen's knee problem, there were some factors where it's like, the push might not be as effective. Understandable. But then they decide a couple times to run a run play on the 1-yard line from shotgun. What? Why?
As do most teams love to do for some ungodly reason.
Yeah, within the 5 shotgun.
Like, don't get me wrong. I understand.
Why not go I formation and run it?
Thank you. I mean, I understand on some level you might be trying to fake them out or something, do something. But like, if everybody else is doing shotgun, just line up, especially if you have a guy like Saquon Barkley that can bulldoze people over, and you have one of the best, if not the best, offensive line in football, in the NFL at least.
They're quite good.
Like, do the thing. Do that thing. Sometimes keeping it simple is fine. If it works, it works, which is what the tush push is. I understand why we don't run it in the snow. And if your quarterback's knee is hurt, fine. Why overthink it? Whatever.
Have you thought about how cool not keeping it simple looks sometimes, though?
Well, clearly, I don't know anything in that.
Ben Johnson would like to have some words.
I guess. But yeah, no, I think overall, I argue it's not a true revenge game, but the Commanders have also looked pretty flashy, pretty good through the playoffs. I mean, I don't think anybody picked them to be this far into the playoffs at all at the beginning of the year. A lot of people probably saw this as a bit of a rebuild year. And quite frankly, I don't have really too many problems with the Commanders outside of one, they're the opponent this Sunday, and two, they're in the same division. But I quite frankly, if the Eagles lose, I'll be upset, obviously, but the Commanders are far. I mean, if anything, it's just more of an argument for the NFC Beast. Kind of like what we were talking about in college football, where maybe the Big Ten isn't too bad. So
yes, the presumed division that we all thought was definitely going to come out of the NFC side, and definitely not maybe the NFC North side, where 3 of the teams were dominant most of the year. Definitely did not think that at all.
The NFC NFC North going 0-3 was kind of funny, just objectively.
Well, not to Nate.
Hey, I'm gonna blame the Lions for that.
That's why I said kind of.
They were the team that's supposed to be good.
Yeah.
I was gonna say to the Vikings' credit, I don't think everybody was excited for JJ McCarthy coming in, and then he got hurt, and so then at that point, everybody's like, "All right, the Vikings might have a rough year." I'm not saying I didn't expect him to go necessarily far. They've obviously got probably the best receiver in the NFL, arguably. But, I don't think anybody was expecting Sam Darnold to have an almost, for the first 14 weeks, an almost MVP level game every now and then. And his performance was very good. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying that I didn't expect the Vikings to maybe get to the championship game, but Detroit was the big surprise. But the one thing that I took from the Detroit game is that the Commanders were able to just dink and dunk and big play and everything against their defense. Well, last time I checked, Philadelphia has a pretty good defense, so I don't think they'll be able to do the same thing. It's going to be a good game. It'll be an exciting game.
Yeah. With that, we can quickly preview the other side of that conference slate, the Bills versus the Chiefs. Pretty sure the last time that this happened, we had the iconic picture of Stephon Diggs looking at the Arrowhead confetti, thinking, man, I'll be back there. And then he never was. At least not with the Bills. But yes, Zach, absolutely.
Either.
Go Bills.
If you're only
10, no notes.
If you're only listening to this on Spotify or whatever your preferred platform is, on our video version that we have, I have a banner set up that says "Go Bills," because I think the entire nation at this point is ready for Bills Mafia to take over. Can you imagine Bills Mafia, the fan base, at a Super Bowl in 2025?
Oh, that's what I dream of.
Look,
dude.
Look. Bills, Eagles, those fans would be.
The games in
not enough grease for those light poles.
So I was just gonna say the game's in New Orleans, right?
Not enough light poles, not enough tables.
Dude, New Orleans is gonna be destroyed, regardless of who wins.
Well, yeah, it's snowing there.
Yeah, just imagine if they have another blizzard for the second time, I guess, in history.
Yeah.
That wouldn't
Totally normal.
That wouldn't happen.
Weird.
Totally normal. But yeah, anyway, so Bills did beat the Chiefs earlier in the regular season. by the heroics of Josh Allen. Now, obviously, as we all know, regular season Kansas City and playoff Kansas City, two completely different teams. Kansas City seems to get to the playoffs and then just turns on this other gear that they have.
5 extra zebra stripe players.
Yeah.
Just acquiesce into the team.
That little switch in the Chiefs locker room that says Roger Goodell playoff Super Bowl button activation. They press that when they get to the playoffs, and that's what happens. I mean, should be an entertaining game.
It should be, but before Nate hopped on, Andy and I were talking about this, and so potentially embrace debate. The Chiefs don't look, and I know it's only been one game so far because they had the bye, but they don't look like the same playoff Chiefs that we've seen in years past. Where years past, you can argue like, yep, the Chiefs are just probably going to do it again. And then football's different, but I don't know. They look beatable. Is what I guess.
The main argument against that is that they've looked like that all season and they lost 2 games.
Correct. And I know I said very early on in the season that I did not think the Chiefs offense is very good, and they are not very good. And I know, like you said, Zach, before we talked, there were only like the Chiefs and like 1 or 2 other teams in the entire NFL that have not scored 30 points all year. I'm pretty sure the Raiders are one of them, or the Panthers might be one of them. And both of those teams,
the Panthers
finally did.
Panthers did.
The Saints might be one of them. No, the Saints
I think were.
Either way, the other teams that you're comparing them to are teams that maybe won 3 or 4 games, and then you sit here with Kansas City that's like 16-2. That's because Spagnuolo is a fantastic defensive coordinator, and the Chiefs' defense is really good, and that's what they've leaned on all season. And then they've just relied on Mahomes to do his thing when they needed him to, and then that's just kind of how they've won games. It's going to be, can Buffalo repeat the same recipe that they did earlier in the season when they beat them in Buffalo? Now, obviously, this is going to Arrowhead at night in a playoff environment against Patrick Mahomes and the Zebras. Really tough to do. I do think this Bills team is definitely different than the one that we had that back and forth 20-second touchdown barrage that we had before Josh Allen lost the coin toss, which then gave us our overtime playoff rule after that game. So it's gonna be good. Obviously it'll be, can Josh Allen do the same thing again? Because Spagnuolo is gonna have them prepared for this time around. To kind of tame what they saw the first time against the Chiefs. And then it's gonna be, watching the Chiefs against the Texans, I don't know if this is just the Texans thing. They just kind of refuse to cover Travis Kelce, and that's kind of a major issue.
Well, I think that's most teams, especially the playoffs. From what I've seen,
Denver has definitely done that from time to time.
Last few years, everyone's just like, yes, you're all pro, probably future Hall of Fame tight end that has gashed everyone in the past. Maybe
let's just leave them open.
Coverage with like our smallest guy, though.
Yeah.
So he can't tackle him even if he does catch it.
Because that touchdown that he scored last Sunday, he caught it in the there was probably not a defender around Travis by like 10 yards. And then he just took it kind of upfield and just kind of weaved his way and stiff-armed a guy into the end zone. And it's like, why wouldn't you not cover him? I get if you're playing zone, but like, you got to be a little bit better than that, you would think. So, it's
weird concepts over here.
Weird concepts. I know. We know ball. I fully expect, the Chiefs to be prepared at this time to what Buffalo's going to throw at them. And it's so hard at this point. It's what we did with the Patriots for so long. It's like, you just don't bet against Belichick and Brady in the playoffs. Just because they get there every year. And it's now the same thing. You just don't bet against Reed and Mahomes in the playoffs. But this Bills team might be the one that can actually do it this time of year. Just because Kansas City, like we've said, has just not looked great on offense all year. And this might be a game that they maybe choke for once. But Xavier Worthy had a really good game, so you got to cover him. And then you still have washed up Juju and DeAndre Hopkins, but they are still viable threats on the Kansas City receiving corps. So it's not like you can totally throw out those two guys, but they've come up with big catches from time to time. And then they added Hollywood Brown back too. So there's a lot of options. It's just, can Buffalo offense just keep up with against a very tough Kansas City defense. And that's pretty much what it's going to come down to. But your guys' thoughts, or should we go into our Vikings and Broncos season recaps?
My only thoughts are that if it's a Chiefs Eagles Super Bowl, we're not cheering for injuries. I'm gonna get some hate for this. That's fine. You gotta go for the knees of Mahomes. Get Carson Wentz his legacy game.
It didn't work the last time that happened, though, because freaking Mahomes got hurt in that game before, and then he came into the Super Bowl with a bum knee and still won.
That's why you do it in the Super Bowl. Force him to play Carson Wentz in his revenge game. And I know all of the Chiefs fans that listen to this, I imagine by the thousands, are going to be angry with me for that comment.
Or
have you considered the lulls?
Honestly, though,
and I know that you haven't because you're very angry with me still, but it would be funny for
honestly though, for no other reason than just the pure humor that would bring. Yeah, absolutely. Like, that would be hilarious. Like, yeah, obviously I'm not necessarily cheering for injuries, but that would be funny.
Even better. Okay, even better. That happens in the game. Prior to the game, Jalen Hurts gets injured, can't play the Superb Owl. Have to bring in Nick Foles as the guy for the Superb Owl. You get Nick Foles, Carson Wentz. The script writes itself.
You know what? You might be onto something here.
I mean, we know Goodell is really good at the script writing, so it could happen.
Well, we don't know if he's really good at it. We just know that he does it. So
he pays people that are good at it, though.
That's right.
But he is good at it.
All right.
Yeah, Nate, if you want to finish up our NFL talk with our season recaps for our prospective teams.
Sir, yes, sir. Solid season, honestly.
Yeah,
everyone wants to dunk on the NFC North, sure, whatever. Everyone else kind of dropped the ball. I mean, I don't know what else you expected out of the Minnesota Vikings. We're starting Sam Darnold. We got to 14-2. They're tied for the second best record in the league.
Mm-hmm.
With Sam Darnold at quarterback. If you would have told anyone that at the beginning of the season, they would have called you crazy. I would have called you crazy.
I was calling you crazy. Just because the most recent thing we had seen of Sam Darnold was the ghost memes.
Right? And they lost to the Rams in the first round. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and Matt Stafford might be good at football. Turns out when they're all healthy. That's what a revelation. Football. Turns out Sam Darnold under pressure, not quite as good. As football happens. That's okay. 14-3 at the end of the season, with all the cap space in the world going into next year.
Yeah. And
a rookie QB who literally got to sit on the sidelines, heel his knee up, and just watch the NFL game and get an intimate knowledge of the offense and see how a perennially not well considered quarterback can operate successfully in that system. Encouraging to me, at least. He's still a bit of an unknown commodity because he hasn't really been on the field in an NFL game except for, I think, his first preseason game. But
right,
if he doesn't pan out, you have a bunch of cap space and trade capital with still Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson hanging out as receivers. The running back room's still a little suspect, but I mean, you can shore that up with the better draft pick that you got by losing in the first round of the playoffs now. Like I said at the beginning of the season, I genuinely thought the Vikings were going to be out of playoff contention by the end of September at best. So the fact that they, again, tied for the second best in the league, or at least the NFC, for record. Like, I don't know. I'm not going to complain too much about that. I was just happy to be here. Glad that they were, bottom dwellers and just kind of playing for the next draft pick at that point. I don't know. Future's bright. I'm excited to see what they do in the offseason and next year. I appreciate the Lions losing and not winning a Super Bowl before the Vikings there. So that's very nice. They should probably keep that up. Packers also lost in the first round, so
two Zach's Eagles.
They can't pull a weird bud on us. So that's a nice cherry on top. So I don't know.
They could pull a weird bud on you, but it'd be again weird.
Weird. It'd be really weird. And it turns out that all of their receivers that are like in their second year and are potentially 18 times better than Justin Jefferson weren't that.
Weren't that
shockingly. They weren't that. So I don't know. Someone somewhere's lying about something. But yeah, I mean, it was a cool season. It was nice to see that like the NFC North prior to the playoffs was considered like a genuine like contender and powerhouse. Like, I don't know the last time that's happened. It hasn't been recent.
Right.
Usually you get one or two of Minnesota and Green Bay, and yeah, I mean it was fun. I'll see y'all next year. We'll see what happens.
Kevin O'Connell's gonna have
go draft your team. Please.
I was gonna say
yes.
Kevin O'Connell's gonna have a long career in Minnesota. I think he's good.
Yeah, because you just signed him to an extension today. On the fact,
I haven't seen the details, but it's multi-year extension, and he was able to rehab Sam Darnold for like 90% of the season, and I mean even into last year, he had Josh Dobbs looking all right for a couple games and spot starts, and Kirk Cousins was balling out before he decided to part ways with his Achilles. So.
Now, just imagine what he can do with a quarterback that he wanted that doesn't have a hurt ACL.
Yep, and I've been saying this for like probably the past 2 years now that like they've got the weapons. They don't need a Mahomes making all the flashy like big plays. They need a guy that can command the offense, get the ball to playmakers, and just let it thrive from there. And from what I've heard, JJ McCarthy has a lot of that, and I mean he throughout his career has been a proven winner, which is a good thing to have in the locker room for your quarterback there. So we'll see. A lot of uncertainty, but a lot of optimism. So
yeah,
solid season from this old Vikings fan. I'll allow it.
I'll allow it too.
I suppose.
I know my preseason prediction that I said that I just wanted Denver to have a winning season, and they did. I
don't know. Hold on. If we're going back to what you actually thought, it was like, I don't think they're going to win like 3 games. And
to be honest, like everything that had happened, yeah, it was hard. You were in cap hell with Russ and other dead money that you had to cut. I would absolutely had no idea what Bo Nix was going to be like. You had absolutely no idea what the young offensive rookie-led team was going to be like. And that's, why I think Vegas had him at 4.5, 5.5 win season total. So the fact that 1, they had a winning season. 2, they got to the playoffs for the first time since 2015. Albeit that they had a little help from the Chiefs at the end, which I don't care. Cry all you want, Bengals fans. Don't lose to the 3-14 Jared-led Mayo Patriots to start your year. That's just me. If Bengal fans want to cry about that, so be it. I don't care if Joe Burrow would have been a better choice in the playoffs. Don't lose to teams like that. Like, that's plain and simple. And Denver didn't, so that's why we got there.
Points.
Yeah, it's just saying. But yeah, overall, definitely, I think exceeded my expectations, exceeded a lot of people's expectations of what Denver was going to do this year. Just because there was a lot of unknowns, and I echo Nate's sentiment. I mean, the future's definitely bright in Denver. they took a lot of the cap money of Russ's contract this past season, so they opened it up a little bit more. I think it's up to like 35 or 40 million in cap space this year, which is a lot more than they had last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if Denver still tries to do a lot in the draft and maybe some low and free agency ads this offseason, just because they still don't have a lot of money to spend, but you have a reasonable more amount to spend that you had prior. Because they're only taking, I think, now 33 million in total of dead money this year, and then they'll be done with Russ's contract. And then next year, then you can open up the pocketbook. But all that being said, I mean, if you still have the same approach and you kind of did what you did this year, next year, I still would call that a success. Now, did they set the bar a little bit higher this year than I expected? Probably. But the future is bright, considering knowing now that as long as Bo Nix doesn't have a sophomore slump, kind of like what Stroud had this year, there's optimal reason that, Bo should improve. And as long as, my only criticism of Sean Payton is I don't think he should be calling offensive plays anymore. I know you're still trying to protect Bo and still not trying to get him in dangerous situations to make him a smart football player. But there were times this year that, the offense just was stuck in its own mud because of the play calling, and Sean didn't want to open it up. Maybe we see more of that next year. But regardless, the overall season, they exceeded my expectations. I just wanted them to have a winning record, but they got to the playoffs. I got to experience, a first-time playoff game since the Super Bowl for Denver. So that was, albeit, they got stomped by the Bills. But if I was going to lose to any team in the playoffs, it would have been the team I was rooting for and still rooting for was the Bills. So it was a fun experience. It was a fun season. We'll see what happens with the coaching searches. I know Vance Joseph is definitely a name still being thrown around for open spots. And if he comes back next year, I mean, Denver should keep a lot of its pieces for next season on defense. So that defense should still relatively be the same. And then it'll be just what they do in the draft on offense. I think running back and tight ends are definitely top of the priority list for Denver. Maybe a wide receiver, maybe a free agent wide receiver. Who knows? But I was, much as I think and we can say this about any sports team. There were times that Denver did make me mad this season, but it's the fact that they had shown optimism that they can win games this season. And, that's just shows how much that we all care about our teams. Is if they make us mad, then we care about them a lot. So I was happy just knowing that, maybe Denver's finally found something of a stable QB room for once, instead of going through the Browns carousel of coaching back or quarterback rooms. Now maybe we can finally just settle on one for a while and just keep going with Bo Nix, and we'll see where that future takes us. With Nate too, and once you see what you get out of JJ, maybe that's the future of your team right now. Viking fans really don't know until next season. I know that Sam Darnold probably will not be with Minnesota next year. If I had to be a betting man, I don't think he's going to. I don't think Minnesota would be wise enough to spend that money. At least I don't think so. But
nah, Darno's gonna get a massive bag somewhere. Probably going to like Vegas or something.
I would not be surprised if the Raiders try to get him. One, because the Raiders are in no draft position to try to get a quarterback now. And depending on who they hire as head coach, Sam Darnold's probably going to be the biggest quarterback free agency name right now. And for a team like Vegas, you have the best young tight end in the league on Vegas' offense right now. So try to get him a quarterback that can get him the ball, and maybe add another wide receiver piece for the Raiders. Not that I want them to do that, because why would I cheer for that? But
he's not a bad stopgap guy.
It's not.
He has.
The Raiders will pay him.
He showed, I think, his ceiling this year, but that's still a solid floor if he can, get the ball where it needs to go, get it to, Brock Bowers, and
right.
That'll, that's serviceable for a team that needs a guy to run an offense competently.
Right. Let's not forget, though, Tom Brady was not the best running quarterback ever, and he was able to make passes. He was able to read defenses like a pro, obviously.
Right.
So, he has the tools to do it, and he's proven that. He just needs to do it consistently.
Yeah. But that's That's kind of where I echo a lot of Nate's sentiments. Is that the future's bright for Denver, definitely Minnesota, and especially if you know what you can get out of JJ. Just kind of how Bo showed it this year. You know what you can get with Bo, and definitely can keep getting more. Just the ceiling can only go up and up as long as you provide that he's going to keep on the same path. There's a lot of opportunity for Denver on offense, and they certainly compared to last year and 2 years ago's offenses. I mean, this year's offense was far better, despite at times they looked rough and stuck in the mud. But I would take whatever happened this year compared to the 2 years of Russell Wilson in Denver. That I know that much.
And obviously that paid off for him too, because Russell Wilson had a pretty good year in Pittsburgh. So
until like the last 5 games.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, I think we're finally seeing that Russell
Yeah.
Wilson might be finally hitting his age.
Just to change of scenery was all that he needed.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I don't have to furiously be mad at him for spinning into sacks anymore, because Bo Nix can get out of sacks now, and that has been such a game changer for how I view the offense.
Turns out that helps.
It does help. With that, before we kind of wrap up and maybe sprinkle in a little Nebraska football, job openings, at least Ben Johnson, we know, confirmed Bears head coach now. I am
tough.
Tough. I know. Probably, especially with the offensive pieces that Chicago has, probably Chicago might see an uptick. They still have a bad offensive line, which they desperately need to work around.
Well, hopefully they do something with that in the draft this year.
You would hope. Maybe. I've been seeing reports. I think Aaron Glenn is Detroit's defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
He is going for a second round of interviews in New York for the Jets. So
supposedly they don't want him to leave the building.
Yeah.
It's the ESPN notification.
I saw an hour an hour and 15 minutes ago that he did actually leave the building finally. So
we know that
had to.
Yeah, legally had to. We knew. I think this happened last week. Rabel to the Patriots, which is not a surprising shock at all, considering he was a former Patriot. So that just kind of
it was surprising that they fired Mayo.
Yeah.
Especially because
the minute that Drake May started playing, there was like, oh, there's actually some future for this Patriots offense.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, let's give him another year with Jared Mayo.
Yeah. And then they hire noted defensive coach
Mike
to become the head coach. I don't think Vrabel's a bad coach at all.
Did you see who they hired for their offensive coordinator that happened today?
They did.
Josh McDaniels coming back, baby.
Man, the myth
is the third round.
What are the odds he goes back to the Raiders in 2 more years?
Pretty good.
At this point, it's gonna happen.
No, this time I swear it's gonna work.
Robert Saleh, I think, is going back for another interview in Jacksonville. Or it's his first interview. It's one of the two.
That's an interesting landing spot for him.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll happen. That's what I've seen. I
don't
know who
I think a great landing spot would be if Brian Flores leaves defensive coordinator position. Yeah, so it would be nice. But
Robert Saleh is going to get a head. You're going to have to give up that dream because he's going to get a head coaching job somewhere, because it was vastly proven this year that he was not the problem on the Jets.
What do you mean? He was clearly the issue with the Jets. There were no other problems.
None whatsoever, Zach.
Just one more Aaron Rodgers friend. Just one more Aaron Rodgers friend.
Yes, and I promise it'll work.
Mike McCarthy.
Yes, and then we don't. It's maybe assumed that Kellen Moore might be the next Cowboys coach. Maybe they also might hire whoever their current offensive coordinator is for that coach.
My favorite speculation for the Cowboys job is still got to be Deion Sanders. I think he's basically come out and said that that's not happening. He was using it for leverage for Colorado.
Yeah,
which is bonkers to me though too, because it's like. Mm-hmm. The Cowboys he could absolutely go to the Cowboys and probably draft Shadur and just keep doing what he was doing. Like, whatever, I guess, but it'd be hilarious.
So I think that's all that I've heard about the latest rumors right now for NFL coaching jobs.
Really, outside of Ben Johnson going to the Bears, the other ones are still open. So.
And I think Ben Johnson was probably like the first domino piece to finally start the fall of the other pieces, because we knew Rayball. The minute that rumor came out, you're like, yeah, he's probably going to the Patriots, because that just seems like a nepo hire. But I think Ben Johnson was like the other golden piece that the minute that one falls, then other teams know, they're like, oh, wait, we're out of the Ben Johnson race. We know we're going to go get this guy now because we can't get Ben Johnson anymore. So I'm sure we'll see a lot of those hires here shortly, because you probably want a head coach in your room before you start thinking about drafts. No.
Terrible.
But yeah, unless we have any more NFL thoughts before, we can kind of put a bow on the Nebraska season 2. Now that their bowl game's done and now the college football's done. The only really big notable news that happened outside of the bowl game was we now know that Ed Foley will not be coaching special teams in 2025.
No.
But I don't think
I'm renouncing.
We have not heard anybody since.
Yeah.
We don't know who it's going to be.
I think Foley's still with the team, though. I think he's in a different role position. But I think
because he's a great recruiter, and I've thought that too. Is you want to keep him on the staff because he is like he was the one that was like tweeting out pictures of him at the local towns and local high schools out there recruiting at state, and he is a great recruiter. He's just not that good of a coordinator, unfortunately, and that's just sometimes how it is. But we don't know. Rule has not speculated on anything that who we might hire as the new special teams coordinator. I've heard the rumor right now that Tennessee's coordinator right now has Nebraska ties. Whoever that is could be a possibility. He previously did coach at Nebraska before. I forgot what his name was, but he's an option. But who knows? And who knows when we're going to find out that news, since we're going to be in the lull of the offseason until we get to spring ball. So, most of their transfer portal class, I think, is done. They're up to 16 or 17 total guys now if they got out of the portal. As we know, a couple big offensive pieces, both at receiver, defensive pieces that they got, considering they had to replace a lot of people that did leave. We know that Vincent Shavers and Deshaun Singleton are coming back for their 7th and 8th years of college eligibility. Yay veteran status, but not yay how NCAA runs their football eligibility process. So
the 7th and 8th years are getting a little ridiculous.
Yeah. Which again, I obviously from our biased up opinion, we're not mad that we're getting veteran experience back. Just because we also don't know what John Butler's defense is going to look like next year either. So it's nice to have some key pieces there that were, coached by him this past season as their secondary coach. So it's, it was a fun season, I think, for obviously not what we expected after they started 5-1, or 4-1, whatever they were before that Indiana thrashing game.
Real quick, speaking of like 7th and 8th year players, did anybody still confirm that Sean Clifford is not on the Penn State roster still?
I cannot confirm that. Haven't confirmed that he's even in the NFL either. So he might be in like a purgatory type state between college and NFL.
Who is the other? So, UFL quarterback.
Yeah, UFL, CFL, XFL, whatever you want to call it.
Who was the other one that seems to? I think is still in college.
Oh God,
was it Spencer Petras?
Yes, yeah, the
former
Iowa quarterback.
Oh,
is he still in college?
No, the last
year. Caden McNamara transferred.
Caden McNamara.
Yeah, there we go.
He's been there forever. Time to get him out of college.
He transferred to like Eastern Tennessee or something like that. I don't know.
I have
nothing against Tennessee.
Already placed my bet for the Natty on Eastern Tennessee. So,
yes,
put it on Northern Iowa.
Futures are strong
because he proved at Iowa that he was able to take a team that had arguably the best Big Ten running back all the way.
Yeah. That's that's what we call a fake out, everyone. I actually put my money on UCF.
Oh God! Oh man, I forgot. I forgot. Has that news happened since we last? No, I think it happened prior. Or has it happened since we last talked?
No, we talked about it because we made how many? Oh, I'm going to be sick if he does well there, but we know he's going to.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
So
I forgot. Man, this off season, they're like the preseason thing that we do in like 6 months is going to be fire with all that.
Yes.
Oh my God. Brett Ray, just press end on this and just have the end of the episode just be that. Goodbye.
If you guys wanted some way too early preseason hype to get you by,
actually,
a lot of the polls I've seen from like 24/7 and On3 have Nebraska at like that 24, 23 preseason top 25 range. If you want some early bettings for lines and over under records, some very early odds right now, 7.5 win season total to start right now. So January, that could be our baseline of off-season hype is right now 7.5 win season total. And if you want a over, or if you want a spread for the home opener, or quote unquote home opener against Cincinnati at Arrowhead, it has Nebraska at -8.5 right now. So that's your way too optimistically open spread, as Nebraska right now is a touchdown plus favorite against Cincinnati to open the game in August.
But
August 28th. You want to start counting down to that.
I'll take the over on whatever that is.
Yeah.
Holgerson.
Right now. You're putting that bet in now.
Holgerson and Dillon are going to go off for 200-yard bombs.
150-yard bomb air raid offense.
Nope, 200 down.
Oh, 200. We upped it from 50
they
yards.
have the entire offseason to get the extra 50 yards.
Fair
yeah.
Love it.
So that will be our kind of baseline barrage to see how the offseason, as we get into spring and summer months, see how the Vegas odds look at our win season total, how they look at that first game. So we've got a baseline right now at 7.5 for wins and -8.5 open line spread against Cincinnati on August 28th.
I'm taking the over on both of those. I know that there's going to be a lot of Kool-Aid drank between now and then, so I'm just like preemptively getting in that mindset. So
we'll just start chugging it now. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Never too early.
With that, we'll wrap this up here. So obviously big notable games this weekend are obviously your NFL conference championship games between Zach's Eagles and the Commies, and then the Sunday night capper of the Bills and Chiefs. Nebraska ball does play Wednesday, and I do believe they probably play a week. I think they play Sunday at Wisconsin. So got those games. We obviously have our NBA games to look forward to. So despite football season is winding down, if you are big basketball and hockey fans, you are right in the middle grind of your seasons and probably loving it. So unless you're a fan of Nebraska ball, which again, please do not tune in to Nebraska ball. I beg of you, please do not.
Well, this one you can. Not, if it goes poorly, though,
then you have to not tune in.
Yeah.
Any last words, boys?
Scurs by 90.
The Wolves are back.
As he says with such confidence.
Yeah, I'll finish with Go Birds.
Obviously, we are all, well, I'm not going to say we're all Eagles fans. Most people probably don't like Philadelphia.
So
we are all for sure Bills fans.
They have great steak. So
then cheese form?
Well, usually in steak form, but you add the cheese on top.
Cheese. Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Oh, that's what I've been doing wrong this whole time. My steak's been in cheese form. Dang it.
Now I know.
Yeah. I knew I was missing something there. Thanks, Nate.
You gotta set a W for Wombo.
You got it set to M for a minute. Oh, goodness.
With that, please find the Patreon link for Zach so he can eat some of these steaks with cheese in the future. That might help him. But I am Andy. That is Zach. That is Nate. And we are the Sportsball Podcast, your source for sports.